I've been painting and playing and experimenting with acrylics for over 10 years, and I'm here to share some of my very favorite acrylic painting techniques with you. This is part 2 of a 3-part series, and in this video, I'm sharing 4 techniques for layering and blending color in your paintings. Okay, our first technique for layering up the image of our painting is using a wet into wet blending technique. So what I'm gonna do is create a sort of medium, I would say, pink color. There we go. And then I'm going to go ahead and just paint it on my petal. We want this inner part to be more in shadow and the tip of the petal more in the light. So we're going to grab some white and we'll make a lighter pink. And while this dark pink is still wet, we're going to go ahead and just add the light pink on there. And just sort of do some gentle little strokes back and forth and create a blend between the two. And you can see how it's not perfect. You kind of have to work on it. Go back and get some red, some more of our dark pink. We can just kind of work back and forth to create sort of a soft blend between our colors. And the more that you work it, the more they'll blend, the more sort of mushy the color will become. And you can bring your blend all the way down. It might go a little too far and you'll say, oh, I need to go get some more of my color and kind of make a little darker there. Maybe I'll even grab my darkest magenta and continue on blending till I like how we've got it. I personally don't use wet into wet blending as much as I use this next technique, which is layering values, but with dry time in between the layers. So I'll show you what I mean. So say I want my petals to have a general kind of medium pink appearance, but then they're going to have darker and lighter values on them for shadows and for highlights. So what I end up doing is I'll use my medium pink to just basically fill in. And I'm gonna wait for this pink to dry, or I can dry it quicker with my blow dryer, and then we'll move on to the next value. So now that my medium pink is pretty much dry, then I usually try to move on to my shadow color, and I'll get my reddish magenta mixed up here again. And then I will go ahead and start putting in the shadow color here. And so the two colors are not mixing because the medium color is dry, the dark color is just hanging out on top of it. And then I might just make this just a little bit darker there. And there's like a little wet into wet blend that I'm doing here. So you can even kind of mix these two methods together. So I've almost got 3 values now, medium, dark, and even darker, because it just looked like it needed it there. And then I'm going to dry this, and then I'm going to do my highlight. Okay, so now we're all dry. This is fixed. It's not moving. It's not mixing with anything that we're going to put on top of it. So now I'm just going to make a highlight color, and I am going to just define where the light is hitting this petal with this highlight color. Now that I have my highlight on, I might do a little bit of a wet into wet kind of to soften a few areas. So I'll go back and make a medium pink and kind of just work this with a sort of a push and a pull of the colors. But since what's below is all dry, those things aren't getting activated anymore. And that's kind of nice. I like having that fixed, and I know that that is not going to be, activated or brought into what I'm doing. I don't have to worry about those colors under there anymore. So now that we've talked about 2 different ways of blending color, we're gonna move on to another way of layering and getting depth into your painting, which is called dry brushing. So I really enjoy using thick, scruffy, stiff brushes. This is an oil painting brush for dry brushing. And we just get a little bit of paint. So I'm gonna use this dark green. We get a little bit of paint in our brush, not that much. And then we basically just sort of drag it over the surface of the painting, and we're not aiming for thick, opaque application of paint. We're doing more of a brushy, textury sort of a look. The thing that will keep your brush from being able to dry brush is having too much moisture in your brush, like maybe you just rinsed it out and you're gonna try to go ahead and do dry brushing. When your bristles have a lot of moisture still left in them, they'll tend to clump and they won't want to sort of spread and just do this really soft, scruffy, hazy sort of a look. Now what I'm gonna do is just work on this painting with the techniques that I've showed you so far, switching in and out between wet and wet, layering dry layers of value, and then also doing dry brushing. And you can see how the painting develops using those techniques. Our fourth tip for layering up and developing your painting is glazing. So you can glaze with a brush, and you can also glaze with a scraping tool of some sort. I love the Catalyst Wedge tool for scraping on glazes because it kind of adds a level of chaos to the painting. You don't really control exactly where it's going to go. You can have some level of control, but it's also going to kind of do its own thing. If you want more precision applying glazes in very specific places, you can use a brush. So I have a Golden brand fluid acrylic here. I love them for glazing especially their transparent ones, because they allow you to see through the paint to what's underneath, but it tints it. And that's what glazing is all about. It's about tinting and allowing the colors underneath to kind of come through your color. So we're gonna just start scraping it, and you can see how it's immediately changing the colors that are underneath it. Look at that. Whoa. And I just love like the unexpected nature of what happens when you start putting on glazes. So I'm using this more for a kind of scratchy textural glaze, and then we'll try a brush for a more softer controlled glaze. So as this layers over different colors, see, that's it put on really thick, and then you can pull it thin and you can see the other colors showing through. I really love all the weird color combinations that this particular color, which is green gold, makes. So I just use it over and over in my paintings because it just really transforms what's below it. We can do a more controlled glaze with a brush. I'm gonna use my soft brush here, my synthetic brush, and I'm just using ultramarine blue and getting just a thin amount. And we can even add a little bit of water to it to kind of help the flow. And we're gonna use it just to sort of tint this background. And you can see the other colors showing through. If we get a little too much, we can always paint off some. We can use the tip of the brush to kind of paint around, kind of pick where we want this to be. You can also kind of thin it out with a paper towel. Ooh, that's pretty. And you can be really selective. Like, I like this intense green color there, so maybe I'll leave that there, but then I'll come in underneath it and kind of soften it and continue my blue tint, my blue glaze down underneath here. And what I really like about glazing with brushes is that you can kind of fade it away. So if I want my glaze to end here in the background, I can use the softness of the brush, just sort of feather it out and just sort of fade it away so you don't have a harsh line of where that area is ending. Thanks so much for joining me, and if you found this video helpful, please hit the like button and subscribe to my channel. I would love to hear what you're working on and maybe some of the difficulties or struggles or questions you have about acrylic paints. So feel free to drop me a comment down below. I would love to answer your questions and maybe even make some future videos answering some common issues or problems to help you guys out. All right, I will see you in the next video. And until then, happy painting. Bye.